Picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Well, hello out there to all of you in YouTube land. It's new kit day, new model day, new project day. That's always the most fun because new project days are always the they are replete with potential. They are nothing but success at this point because we haven't done anything yet. But it's just raw potential on new project day, and again, people ask me, how do I choose the things that I'm building? And it basically comes down to three factors. Am I interested in doing it? Have I done anything like it lately? And what's coming up in the future? Those are basically the three criteria, if you will. I'm going to be revisiting a project, a more parts in a larger project. Let's just say that, because I know that coming up, this is the third point, coming up this spring into summer, we've got a lot of spaceships coming. We've got the Hawk, we've got the Ares, we've got the Grissom. Spaceships, are taking care of themselves coming up. It's been 3 or so months, close to 4 months now, no, closer to 3 months, since I've done a figure. Also, I just got done with some Star Wars stuff, so I'm kind of burned on the Star Wars stuff for right now. I want to do something that has no decals, has no lighting, and I can use the stuff that I've got here. I don't have to, make a big lighting purchase. This is all going to be resin and paint. It's stuff that I've already got on hand. It's figures that I've been printing. Let's just get to it. You will remember. You'll remember last time, young Will Robinson. Now you'll remember last time that I did this the character of a baby doll from Sucker Punch, and it was a first foray into doing a beauty build. There are more figures in this series, and that's what I am doing now. This is Sweet Pea. On the table here we have Rocket. Now, I'm of a mind to try to do both of these at the same time. Because they're going to use a lot of the same disciplines, they're going to use a lot of the same paints, going to use a lot of the same materials. And there's a economy of scale when you're doing it that way. Plus the fact that I can, if I got a good flesh tone loaded up in the brush, I can hit both characters at the same time. Another thing is these were 3D printed, and I am noticing that the longer that I leave 3D printed pieces apart from each other, they are, shrinking or curing or whatever at different rates. The pieces themselves are, even though I tried very hard to make sure that they're being printed at the same time, but I'm getting things like gaps between parts, and I want to go ahead and get these pieces together. Now, I have not noticed anything happening amiss to Baby Doll in the months since I've built it. It's not like, any cracks are opening up or anything. I just want to get them taken care of. So, what I'm going to be doing, and this is where the folly or the challenge comes in, is I think I want to try to do both of these figures at the same time. So I'm going to call it the sucker 1-2 sucker punch. The 1-2 punch, I think I'm going to call this. So I brought in Baby Doll just to use as an example to show what the final product is going to be like for those who didn't watch the build of it. And to say that yes, these are big gals. Now, actress who played Baby Doll shorter than the actress who played Sweet Pea, so that's why they are the same scale, but the figures themselves are different size, and it's because not everybody is the same height. This is Baby Doll. I'm sorry, that is Baby Doll. This is Sweet Pea, and this is Rocket. Now, Rocket was played by an actress named Jenna Malone. Sweet Pea was Abby Cornish, and Emily Browning. So I am trying to keep everything straight. You know what really started this? What started me on this road today was I wanted to build a robot. There's a robot as part of the base that she uses. So that's what got me into this. Like, but what robots do I have? Oh, I still have those Sucker Punch figures. I can do that. So that's really the seed, the germinating seed of this idea. So that's what I'm going to be doing for the next couple of weeks, and I hope you stick around for the ride. So the first thing I wanted to do when I decided this was what I was going to do was to find a way to make sure that when I put Baby Doll and Sweet Pea on a shelf, that they would, you know, take up as little room as possible, because now I just have this roughed in so you can see how tall this is by the time you get to the tip of her sword. She is taller than Baby Doll, so I need to make sure I have height on the shelf. But I don't want to, if I just put these two bases next to each other, that takes up more width than I really need to. And I had determined, and I found out quite by accident, I was checking on this and it was a happy accident, that if I overlap the bases like this, not only do I save about 3 inches of shelf space, but actually the brick patterns do overlap. I was concerned that, okay, well, I can squeeze them close together, that's no problem, but you know, then the bricks are going to be all akimbo, and no one likes bricks akimbo. But if I turn it just a little bit, I can line up the stone pattern. So that's where I had to move it in that far to get the stones to line up, which is great because her other arm comes like this. I mean, her figure is very compact. And I want to talk about on a separate, once I take Baby Doll off of the table here, I want to talk about how not only I think I have learned more about these figures as I've gone from one to the next, but also how I think the sculptor has learned and changed several things about the way they were sculpted to avoid some of the pitfalls that we had with Baby Doll, as far as being or having access to areas to print, and you know, putting parts together that really don't need, you know, it would have been easier to paint had they not been together, that type of thing. The let me clear off the table, and I will start on that little mini lesson. Okay, we're going to call this Meet the Parts, the Sweet Pea edition. And when I talked about lessons learned from the last, from the Baby Doll printing and sculpting thereon, this is the first lesson. I think the guy noticed. This base is now a two-part base, which I have glued together and sculpted, or put some epoxy sculpt in. But you may think that's not much of a change. It's a simple change that cuts the printing time in half, basically. Because instead of having to print this whole thing like this, you cut it in half and you print this side by side. You print this side by side with that. And therefore it takes up half the time to print. So lesson one. But here is the area that will end up being cut. Trace this out. This is what gets cut out so that it will slide up against the other base. Again, excellent detail on all of this, and he smartly has broken up the parts on natural lines where the costume has a natural at a wrist or at an elbow or at a sleeve. It's a natural point to cut the piece so that you're not having any join lines anywhere near anything that's got skin. And believe me, these kits do show an amount of skin. I firmly believe that if he had not learned his lessons, he would have printed this all as one piece. This is now two pieces. So this is 19 times easier to paint than the same part or the same section of the body on Sweet Pea. I'm sorry, on Baby Doll. Oh boy, you're going to have to get used to that, because I'm going to be making this, confusing these names back and forth. Now the first thing you may notice that is an improvement on my side of this, is printing this in a different resin. This is more of a flesh tone resin, which is going to be a lot better a base for the painting than the gray or even the white that I used on Baby Doll. Now, Baby Doll, her complexion was much whiter, much paler than either of the two characters I've got on the workbench this week. So that's going to be a difference for me, is I need to make characters that are darker flesh toned. They are more healthier. They're not as porcelain. So getting those new flesh tones and making them slightly different from each other. Going back, watching the film, looking at the different actresses to make sure that it doesn't look like they came off the same assembly line. Again, this looks like a printing error. It is not. That is actually baked into the file, and that is a hemline or a seam line on the stocking. And this is the same issue that I had with Baby Dolls. If I sand anything like that, I'm going to end up ruining the very subtle texture that is all over these legs from these leggings that she is wearing. You can see the big seam going up the back. This is clothing. This is not meant to be bare skin. It's just very form-fitting. And even the same here. Now, this is about the only bare skin is the upper thigh, a little bit of tummy, and her arms are bare. Her right arm is bare. Her left arm is it's only the forearm. This is a sleeve here, and it's got a nice piece of armor that will go on. That's going to be a fun piece to paint with all of the metals and aging to make that look like a good piece of armor. That's going to be fun. That'll be a good standout piece. Now, as he did with Baby Doll, he's got the head and chest sunk into the torso there, which makes this a very easy piece to paint and to deal with separately, and then put it into the body. And what you think is a seam line or a bad seam line there is actually the line between her breast and the clothing underneath. So you could say there's a bit of seaming or puttying I think I'm going to need to do along the back there once this is pushed into place. Her clothing would be a lot closer to her, so I'm just filling that in and touching it up at the end I think will be sufficient. But the amount of detail that is sculpted in, like all of the lacings and the buckles and all of that down the back, that's going to be fun. And her hair, like Baby Doll, has add-ons, different pieces. You can paint the entirety of her face and around her ears and everything, and then we can add the hair over top of it. So you look at that, you map it out and say, okay, well, you're never going to see your ears, so don't need to worry about painting that. You could almost draw a line on her face and see, okay, how much of that needs to be painted. But the thing is, all that detail is there, which informs how well the rest of the detail looks. There is a second head with this kit that you could print that has a hood that brings the jacket of her costume with a hood over top of it. I decided not to do that because I could not figure it on God's green earth how I'd be able to paint inside that hood. That it's an impossible sculpt. It's nice if if you're gonna try to print this as a piece and then you find like a nice resin that looks like stone or something and you're making it look like a statue or something. But you would never be able to paint up inside of that hood, so that's why I chose the version that has the hood down and then just her hair. And it's amazing how once you put both halves of her hair in, it just joins up, and that her part is perfect, and you can see up in behind the hair, up into around her cheek. Detail and you would never get in a resin kit because of the undercuts and the back cuts. So that's where 3D printing really shines, is the amount of detail that you can capture. Again, a natural break here, a natural break for the other arm, no puttying needed really. There's a natural break here where the gauntlet or the wrist bit that she wears would attach into the arm. Now there's one tricky joint, and that is the geometry of getting both of these arms together, because she has to grip the sword with two hands. So it's actually, I think, going to be better for me to go ahead and make that joint up at the two hands and then fit the arms into it, because she holds her sword like that. And again, the way everything is sculpted, I could work on this entire top as a separate thing and then glue it onto the waist, or glue it onto the bottom half of the body at the waist. This is a wonderful joint here. It just hides. Let's tilt up. This joint here is a beautiful overlap, a very secure bond, so you could paint and build and do her entire upper body and then glue these two halves together at the end. Again, the way this fits up in, I could stand to sand a little bit more. That's a kind of a tight fit. This is that separation that I was talking about, and if I can sand off that peg that's happening up inside there, maybe I can minimize that. But that's things like this are the reason I wanted to go ahead and get this kit built and done. Let's see what else. The legs, which look massive, aren't really that big once you stand everything up in place. Again, a good point of joining where the stocking and the boot meet the garter there. So that's a good easy joint to make up. And then you have the oversized shoes. Now I think, if anything, I would fault on these kits is that I think that the guy might have a little bit of a shoe thing going on, because again, they're overly platformed, and those were the same deal with Baby Doll, and it's the same deal with Rocket, is that the boots are really big. So that's the part of Baby Doll. What Sucker Punch figure would be complete without her weapons? So we have the really massively huge rifle here. That's it's so big it needs two parts, but that's it. And again, that's where something like this is where the economy of scale comes in, because I can paint up all the weapons for both figures using a lot of the same paints, using a lot of the same finishes, and achieve that at the same time. Of course, we have a scabbard and a blade. Now the blade's a little crooked. I might have to see if there's any bending or reshaping that might need done, but it's not that curved. That's pretty much it for meeting the parts. This robot that's on the base is basically the wreck of a torso robot that she's standing over. I'll go back and review the film to get any details out for that. Alrighty, and now it's time for Meet the Parts, the Rocket Edition. We will start with the head that I was on about a couple of seconds ago. That beautiful sculpt with the looks like a nurse's cap on. And again, an obvious seam here where the neck, where the collar joins the torso. You don't have to worry about trying to blend the skin around her neck. Beautiful choice there. Now, I want to tell you that the most obvious thing about this Rocket figure is the, oh my god, how twisted pose she starts off in. It's like her legs are planted in one direction, and she's doing as much of a body turn as you could probably do, and not break in half. We've got some this is a holster for her big knife. She's got a holster for her pistol on the side, and then these massive, and I mean massive, laced up boots. And they are a twisty thing, but you can get a kind of an idea of, I might even have to pull the camera back even further so that you can see the twisted shape that she is in. And these massive boots again with the big shoes. Again with the big shoes and the heavy soles. I don't get it, but that's okay. Again, the arms are segmented beautifully where the sleeve at the cuff there and at the shoulder. Let me pull the top of this off so that lay that down. But again, set up in a natural break in a way that there is no blending that needs to be done at the skin level. Everything is happening at the break of a costume. Same with this one. The hand, very simple. She's got a flintlock in this that hand and a big old knife in the other. Again, standing back so you can get the whole thing in, and a gun so big it has to be folded. This is the submachine gun or assault weapon or whatever you want to call it. It is the big one. This is strapped to her back, and it actually has this folded stock on it that if you wanted to, you could pin and make unfoldable. You make that hinge work, but that goes, again, let me remove some of these parts. That attaches to her back like that. And as I said, I can paint that gun up, that weapon up at the same time as I'm painting the other. Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, and I think I've got how these three ladies are going to be arranged, shall we say. I was going to say laid out, but that's gross, and I won't think it that way. Of course, I'm such an anal retentive person that my obsession is making sure that the stones line up in the bases, that they're all headed, all the grout lines are going the same way. It is basically the same base. The designer, all he's doing, he's taking the same blank and he's moving the foot holes around, the pegs, or the holes for the foot pegs around. So trying to get the pattern of the stones to line up is the prevailing cause for everything. And I think I found a way to make that happen and minimize the amount of space that this display is going to take up. And it actually works to the benefit of Rocket here, who has such a horrendous twist in her posture, to make her actually facing the same way as the three ladies when you do it that way. So yeah, I think we've got that. Now that I've got that mapped out, I can cut the chunks out of the bases of the two other ones. I'm not going to touch Baby Doll's base, but I could cut the crescents out of the other bases and start priming some stuff. Now, doing research yesterday, watching snippets of the movie, looking online for references, it's a whole lot of black leather and flesh tone. I mean, there's not going to be a tremendous amount of variation. So finding all the different blacks and the aged leathers and stuff, that's going to be the challenge in all of this. Also, I've discovered that most of Rocket's costume consists of fishnet, and the fishnet is not molded into the 3D parts. So I have yet to decide how that fishnet is going to be accomplished. Whether I'm going to steel up my nerve to try to draw it in after it's been painted, after the skin behind it has been painted, to try to go in with a fine, probably one of those acrylic pens, sort of like the chrome pen I have, but only in black, and see if I can draw that in. That might be worth trying to draw in the. It's about the only way to get the fishnet at the right scale. That's the problem. Here I talk about fishes and scales, and it sounds odd just as I'm saying it, but finding a fishnet, it's not like it's something that I can use a doll's fishnet, because they don't normally have that scale of netting. It's usually for a smaller doll or action figure or whatever. So drawing it on might be my last resort. We'll see how it looks without it, and then if it's really going to be necessary. Okay, now you can see how the bases are going to relate to each other now that I've got the crescents cut out of the other two, so that all the bricks line up, and it makes a nice little tableau there, nice little triptych. I don't know whether that was planned, but that's how it's turning out. Okay, I'm rounding up pieces to put the primer coat on, and this is the one of the last ones that I need to work on. Now, it has this semicircle cut out so that it can go up against the other base, and I need to fine tune it. I need to smooth this inside cut out a little bit. And the problem with that is if you're doing it just by hand like that, you can end up running it out of round and not following the curve. So I found what the best way to maintain that was take the piece that I've cut out, which is right about there. Take this piece because that's the curve I want to emulate. That's the outside curve. It's the same diameter as every other one of these. So I take this and I wrap my sandpaper around it, and I use it to run as a sanding block on the inside of this curve, and I just maintain this angle. I'm running my hand underneath it at the same time to hold it flat against the bottom. And what that's doing is then that will allow me to only sand the high spots, or the you see there's a little divot here where there's a dent in it. I'm not sanding that because you see that gap there. I'm sanding on both sides of that, and I will end up working it down to rounding out that gap. But by using the cutoff piece as a sanding block, that allows me to get a nice rounded cut that will go right up against there with a minimal amount of seam work. And it's just a handy thing to have. I mean, I would have normally, if I wanted to, I could put that around it and just grind it back and forth like that. But having this cutoff piece that is large enough, and the fact that all of these are the same piece, they're identical, the circumference of that is identical, so I know that this angle is going to match that angle, or that curve. It's not, the two curves are going to match each other. That gives me a sanding block that is the proper curve, the proper arc. The last piece I wanted to talk about was the rocket's body here, and I'm just looking at how much of that is covered with the mesh stocking. So yeah, it's all through here, it's through here, it's on both the leggings, of course. So that's how much of it is covered with fishnet. So it's a pretty prominent feature. It's going to have to be simulated somehow, whether I end up just simply drawing it on with a black acrylic marker, or penciling it on like this. These are simply pencil lines, but I could, make them nice and dark. The problem is I would probably end up making them too perfect, and they wouldn't follow the contours the right way. So that's going to be a trick, but it's going to help me get the right scale of these. Just drawing them in like that. But I can't get the areas I won't be able to get the pencil into. But then all you need to do at that point, I may end up running like a little bead or something to delineate the top of this, because the top of this fishnet, there is a rounded over hem that goes like that. That may be a piece of wire like that. If I run that around the top, that might give me my top edge. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to go ahead and glue that down now before I end up putting any primer on this. I just grabbed that off the hand, and it just happened to be the perfect size. Wonderful, let's do that. Okay, here's that detail I was talking about, where it's the difference between the fishnet and their skin. And mine might be a little heavy, but I think it accomplishes the same thing. but you can see what I'm saying about it being not the most colorful and vibrant of costumes. This is a cool gray, a dark cool gray with black strapping and silver accents. So that's what we've got here. I've noticed that on the sculpts, what is normally fabric, which is very thin, is a very thick fabric here. It's like the difference between the thickness of those straps and this cross detail on the front on the outfit is very thin, and it's basically the thickness of a piece of material. But here it is the thickness of a 2x4. So that's where we're gonna run into some issues. Basically, the characters, the actresses, are much thinner and delicate shapes. The arms are much thinner and more delicate. The straps are thinner and all that kind of stuff. Then on the model, the sculpt has been beefed up, and you see things here are very, what I would call, heroically proportioned, and not, wee actress proportioned. Well, good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday. Welcome back, and they're done. No, you might be forgiven for thinking that, because there are so few colors, I'll have to say, on these ladies. It's a symphony of flesh tone, black, silver, and gray, and it's a little bit disheartening because I was hoping to get something a little bit more colorful on the workbench this week. But there are plenty of opportunities when it comes to doing the faces and the hair, and even down into the metallics of the robot here, which I think is where I'm going to start today. Doing more research on these, on the costumes for these gals, and what the kits here represent, and they're close, but there are some significant details that are different on these sculpts than are on the actual costumes, or in fact what was in the movie. So I'm going to be less pedantic about making sure every little detail is followed and painted exactly, because the kits just don't look that way. The gloves here are different than the gloves on the costume. The pauldron is certainly different here than is on the costume. Doesn't have this entire piece, is not there. It's more of just a shoulder piece and some scales below it. So I don't think it's worth trying to shave that off or anything. I'm just going to paint it up, but I'm not going to be so slavishly dedicated to making every last seam and stitch look like it does in the movie. Let's see, one other thing. At the risk of turning this around, because everything is just kind of stacked together so you can see it, Sweet Pea is missing her hood. Even though she's not wearing the hood, it should still be on the back of their jacket, or the back of the coat, the duster. And I'm going to sculpt something up in epoxy sculpt, because it's simply, fabric. It doesn't have any great, hard lines to it like a geometric box or a shape. It's just a loose fabric-y piece, so I can sculpt something there, and it'll also help hide that seam back there. So that's something that needs to get done. We talked about the amount of fishnet that is on Rocket that is not sculpted into the kit, so that's going to be a difference as well. I'm not going to rehash everything I did yesterday. I got the bases that I painted up the her gun, and I don't like all of those. You see those diagonal lines? That's a printing defect. That really didn't show up that badly until I put this gloss black primer on it. And rather than sand everything down, I'm just reprinting this piece. The handle here is fine. This piece is fine, but I am going to reprint this. You hear it in the background. I'm reprinting it now, but I've changed the orientation of it on the build plate. So hopefully I think I'm doing something like this now. See, the thing is, once you look at these parts, you can see what sides are never going to show. Like this piece here goes against her back, so I can put all of my supports on this side. You're never going to see them because it's going to go up against her back. so I can use that as my angle and then re-support it that way, and hopefully that'll get rid of all those build lines. The robot, I was interested in doing some research on that, and that doesn't look anything like the robots in the fantasy sequence that this pose is taken from. So all liberties will be taken on the design of on the painting of the robot, which will allow me to throw some additional color into it. This has got a gloss black on it, so we're going to take another stab at doing a chrome silver to see how that's going to turn out. Again, we've got her rifle over here. We've got Rocket's arms and weapons here. Yeah, I think I may start with the robot here this morning. That would also do the pauldron here, which is going to be a chrome, and the blade. Go ahead and pull that off. It was tasking me. I knew it was, excuse me, it's going to fall off at any moment. So I took that off. This is going to be chromed, so I can take that off. And also I discovered there was an inside, like a lamb's wool lining on her duster, which is going to allow me to throw another color in too, which is going to be great. So, okay, now these have had a chance to dry, so I can bring you up to speed on what it is. This is the Vallejo Metal Color Chrome, and I just sprayed that over the gloss black on the robots, and I really like that chrome. It's not quite as chromy as maybe a Molotov, but you know, not nearly as deadly and dangerous for me to work with either, so I'll take that. But it's giving me a nice, and I haven't even tried doing any sort of buffing on these. I don't know whether that includes, I know alclads sometimes work better if you buff them after they've been put down, but that's giving me a nice silver, I think. Certainly nice enough to start putting some scorching and some damage over top of. These pauldrons, I guess that's a pauldron, it's the shoulder armor. That looks nice. It's not going to be, maybe not quite as bumper chrome as I would like, but it's a nice look to it. It almost has like a leathered texture on it here. So I don't know if a chrome would be appropriate for that. I know in the movie it is it's a very much tighter to the shoulder, more formed piece of segmented armor. It doesn't look like this nary at all. This is the idea, but it's not the same design. So like I said, I'm not getting overly sentimental about whether or not these pieces match anything exactly or not. Alrighty, I'm happy with the robot now. I'll leave him alone. I've just been going on a symphony of metallics and the color shifters and a couple of clears over top. But I think we've got it. I think I'm happy with what he's doing with his life. Red eye at the back there. But yeah, and then of course you have the insides there. I might add a little bit more color on these insides, and then we'll be done. Move him off and then start working on this base. As I've been playing with the blacks, as they've been coming out, I've been mentally filing away which blacks I like and which blacks I think will work, and which ones are just going to be a pain to work with. So hopefully that when the time comes for me to start putting all these blacks down, I'll have that already handled. It's just that there's so many black variations going on here, so whenever there's an opportunity to not use black, I'm going to jump on it. Playing with an idea that's designed to turn a negative into a positive, and that is, when I was printing these parts, I had to put drain holes in them, just because you hollow parts and then you put drain holes in them and you hide them in places that won't be seen in the final print, but sometimes you can't get away from it. So I figured I'd take some of those holes this time, and I'd just use it as an excuse to add some zhuzh and run some wires out, and I can paint those up again. But once I see if I like this idea, I can go back and glue them down and paint them and dress them up a little bit. I just thought it was something that would add a little bit of, again, some sparks, some color, some, you know, a little bit of a plus, just to dress up that bottom edge. You're going to have so much height going on at the well, I'll show you. The figure's going to come up to about here, so you're going to have a lot of height. So you want to do something that's maybe going to draw the eye back down to the base a little bit. Well, hello and welcome. It's Thursday. It is the gateway to the weekend, and I am addressing the singular main problem with these two figures, and that is there are so many blacks. There are so many blacks involved that I am having a hard time getting them to look different from each other. Now, obviously, you can do gloss and flat, which we do. Then we can introduce other more subtle blacks, the rubber black, the NATO black, almost down into the German gray, which is a very dark gray, but still not black. There is of course, you got flat black, you got regular black, you got semi-gloss black. There's a black green. There is a sea blue. That's the rubber black. Come on, let's see. Sea blue, which is a very, very dark. It's rubber black is on the cool side of black. It's like a very, very deep bluish black, and the sea blue is in that same family. Well, the problem I'm having is these dresses and coats and other bits of wardrobe have so many blacks in them that I'm trying to find a way to differentiate. So I had started by making these straps, what was it? I think I started with the NATO black. No, I'm sorry. This whole covering, this whole dress is NATO black. So I went in with the, well, it doesn't really matter because then, the rubber black. I did the rubber black on it and it wasn't differentiating enough. The trim you see here is gloss black. So I went in with the sea blue on top of that. Now, of course, some of this gloss is going to get knocked down by the fact that I'm going to end up spraying a clear coat over all of this, and we're going to see how badly that affects it. But I wanted something that gave me a bit of a different finish, and I think I've accomplished that. What you see in here is I'm doing the inside lining, which is more of a dirty lamb's wool lining, a fleece lining inside for this heavy duster. So that's what that is. And now that I've got this to where I'm happy with it, I am going to put it aside and concentrate more on the paving stones, since I'm in a black gray frame of mind today. Alrighty, I'm working on the stone bases, and I'm trying for a nice slate look. And of course the tricky part is not so much for these two to make them look like they're the same floor, but to make it match the original one that's over here, the one that I did months ago, to make it look like they are all part of the same courtyard. Now the cheating way, the easiest way to do it, but which would be wrong and morally questionable and just bad, would be to repaint that one at the same time so that I know I'm using all the same colors and that it would be an exact match. But no, that's cheating, that's wrong, that's bad, and I won't do it. But I do want to have that over here so that I've got so I can see what it is I'm matching it up to. I'm just trying to remember in my old feeble brain box how precisely it was I did that the first time, to make sure that I am doing this. Now, these two are matching each other, because like I said, it'd be kind of stupid if they weren't, since I am doing the same exact thing over both of them. It looks to me like, now before I put the moss in here, there's moss in the grout lines. Before I do that, I need to do some dry brushing, because it looks like there are some lighter, whiter highlights on some of these stones that I need to duplicate that look as well. I've got the brown washes in the cracks. I've got the deep shadows in. I think overall it's a good match. That's all three of them in the same arena, so to speak. I don't know why, and I think that hopefully this is something that the dry brushing will bring out, why there seems to be so much more texture in that one than in these. It is basically the same file. They were not printed on the same printer, and it's a different resin since then, so maybe that makes a difference. I don't know. We'll see, and then we'll know, but then by that time it might be too late. No, I think we're good. I just think we need to do some dry brushing on these, and maybe step back and come back to it, see how I feel about it. I've got I should have written down somewhere, and I might even go back and check the videos of when I did that first one to see what colors I used. I have pretty much always used the same colors for these types of things, so my inventory isn't that wide. But of course, I have to tell you, and be completely honest, when I did Baby Doll, I didn't think I'd be doing any of the other ones. I didn't think that I didn't know for sure whether the other ones would actually ever be made, and at that same point, I didn't know whether my friend would be buying the files and asking me to print them, and therefore I didn't know whether they would be something that I would be working on. So I wasn't working towards the future to make sure that all of my paints were, paint formulas were written down or anything like that. So that's why I don't necessarily have exact matches. I'm trying my best, but as I've said, I think we're getting there. I just think we need a light pass over top of all of these. So we're gonna let this dry. I'm gonna go catch some lunch, and then we'll come back and see how they turn out. Happy days are here again. Yes, it was the dry brush coat that was all that was missing here. As soon as I put the dry brush coat on, it falls right back in line with the other panel. So the secret here is to make sure that the dry brushing is not more obvious or more heavy-handed than the one that's on the existing piece. So I am keeping a tight eye on what the other one looks like, and a quick rein on the brush here so that I can make sure I'm using the same colors on both of these panels that I am working on, and that it is highlighted to the same extent as the one that was done months ago. The goal is to look like they were all painted at the same time, so that you can't tell that one was done several months ago, because hopefully they'll all look like they were painted at the same time, obviously. Okay, that's looking good, certainly for both of these. And now when I put the older one in the center, yeah, that's pretty tight. That is pretty tight. Happy with that. Now the next thing is to do is to put the moss in the cracks, and to do that, all I need to do is to use some canopy glue, squirt it in there, and then some of the same ground cover that I use, and I just sprinkle it in this, and then let it dry, and then dust it off. Alright, yeah, I've just put the moss down, and it's a lot heavier than it's going to finally be. That's because you dump it on there, and then whatever sticks to the glue sticks to the glue, and you dust it off or blow it off the next day once that's had a chance to dry. Now I'm using canopy glue, which hopefully should dry clear or glossy, which is good too, because then I can put the wash over top of it. I'm just tapping some of this stuff down. It's a little heavier than, or a little bit more than what I put in. I mean, I'm doing it in more areas than what I put on the original plate. And some of that is going to end up being covered up by the stuff that's on top of it, like the big robot head that sits here and the robot body that sits here is going to have a lot of that covering it. But I really can't plan so much of that out that I'm thinking about every little thing. I'm just doing what I want to do, and then it'll end up being covered up. But I'm also trying to differentiate so that the eagle-eyed viewer will not notice that these three panels have the same brick pattern to them. I've painted up the stones differently, pulled out some different colors here and there, but if you look at them, you'll be able to tell that they all three have the same center stone. They all three have this same broken stone here. It's just that the robot head goes over top of that one, but all of the same features are there. So I'm trying to, like I said, to differentiate those. And we'll blow this off after it's after the canopy glue has dried. I'm just tapping things down into the wet glue to make sure they're nicely seated. So I've just spent the last, I don't know, 45 minutes to an hour painting laces on these two big boots. Big bootay. What they are, I looked in the reference photos from the costume that was on display, and in the costume those are red laces. Now, not bright red laces, but they are definitely in the red family. So what I did is I took a 50-50 mix of hull red and flat red, and I just, with a small brush, painted the laces. Now it did make for crampy hands and a stiff neck, and using the goggles while I did it, so I need to go take a break. But what this is going to allow me to do is come back with the straight red on a dry brush and just hit the tops of those to bring that red back out, but using this hull red mixture as a good shadow / base. And I would say this is about an 85%. There's about 15% of the holes here, maybe 90%, where I need to go back in with the NATO black and touch up where I accidentally got a little ahead of myself, or the red was too runny and it filled in. So I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to go up and take a couple laps around the house, and then take a break and come back and hit these again with the highlight coat after these have had a chance to dry. Hey everybody, it's Friday. It's the last work day of the week, and we are continuing work on the Sucker Punch figures. Now, this morning I spent some time detailing out Sweet Pea's base, and that is putting the robot head down. I threw some oil spills here. I'm hoping that's going to dry with a nice slick look to it. I don't know. I scratch-built some, I didn't build it, I just scratched some wiring and stuffed it into those holes and scorched it up. So this is ready to take and set aside. I spent a good amount of time this morning on these boots and painting these eyelets in, and boy, that's not fun. A lot of them need touched up because, you start out strong, but by the time you get to the millionth one, you're kind of tired of this whole thing. But I also went through with the red and highlighted just the top parts of the shoelaces, boot laces there, and I'll have to go back and retouch those again because the area around the eyelets all needs touching up again, and of course the gloss black does as well. There are also tassels that at the top of the laces. I'm going to have to fabricate those somehow because it makes no sense. The laces don't tie off anywhere. There's no end to the boot laces. They simply go from the bottom all the way to the top, and then there's no termination of them up there. You have to be able to pull it tight, obviously. So there are some tassels, and they're also there on the costume. They're a little bit of lace with a tassel on the inside. I don't know exactly how I'm going to fabricate that, but it's something I need to do. Maybe I can get some of that little twine and paint it up to match. But Man, painting all of those was a testament to a steady hand first thing in the morning. Yeesh! Like I said, those all need to be redone, but this, not redone, but touched up. But this was the fun thing this morning, and again, I'm hoping, I just spilled some petrol spill there and make it look like some sort of hydraulic fluid coming out of the head. But that's the kind of fun stuff that I'm doing to make these largely black and flesh colored and gray with some silver highlight figures to add some spice to them. Okay, this is the detail I'm working on now. It's this missing hood that is again missing from the final kit, and it's maybe not going to be this big, but I'm using this as my inspiration for it, so we can see some of the lining that's going on the inside, and plus it'll cover up that really obvious gappy joint between the head and neck insert and the top of the torso. So okay, so here we are on the kit, and we've got this really obvious joint at the back of the neck here, and I just taped it off so that the epoxy sculpt won't stick to the paint and want to peel that off, but you can see that big old gap there. So I'm just going to do something that fits over top of that once the neck is in place, this will fit on top of that joint and look like it and get it in camera and look like it belongs there. Okay, I've just spent the last 20 minutes or so carving up this piece of epoxy sculpt, trying to make it look like a folded up hood. And you know, it's fabric, it's got folds. I'm just trying to you know, make it look not like a flat piece of, you know, whatever. So I'm sculpting some divots and some dents in it and some ripples, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to let this get a little bit set up before I try to remove it, because I don't want to tear it, and epoxy sculpt will tear if you try to remove it too quickly. And I'm just putting it on this tape. Again, this tape is a release between the painted shape underneath, or the, you know, the torso beneath, and the it's like wax paper would be in a mold to keep it from sticking and tearing. When I try to remove it, I can pull up the tape and it'll hopefully keep its shape. Oh, I didn't mean to make it rhyme. But we'll let that set up for a while, and then that'll be a piece that will be added to the neckline after the head has already been put in place. You see how it kind of takes care of some of that biggest gap, and I've put the pieces of hair down over it to make sure that everything's clear there, and I have put the sword scabbard on the back so that I know that it's not hitting anything. And I'm just looking at all of these eyelets, and my eyelets are glazing over because of how much fun those aren't going to be to paint. I think I'm going to try using the Molotow pen on those. That's a little bit easier to control. I think that might be a better look, front and back. But yeah, okay, we're going to let this dry for a while. Okay, here's a quick shot of how the Molotow, or Molotov, or Molotov, ends with a W. I'm going to say Molotow, just like a tow truck, looks when you draw it on to the silver highlights. And I think I like that. I think that's a nice, I don't, maybe it putting a clear coat over top of that will knock down the uber brightness of it. But I think that's a good alternative to hand painting each one of those in. Okay, because everything takes up so much space, what I'm going to do is just give you a head to toe to show you where we are at the end of week 1. And some parts are very far along, some parts are not even started. I have not touched any of the skin yet. That's all to be done next week. Most proud of getting the bases done. This is the spilled oil on the robot. That looks good. Got a lot of the accessories at least well underway, if not completed. Things like the blade or the sword, I think I'm mostly done with. I might want to age that up a little bit.
Very happy with the holsters, the leather goods. I think I might need to put some brass on those clasps and such. Again, the weapons are pretty far along. The clothing is pretty far along. The skin, again, I have not touched. But here you go, and there's those laces I was talking about. So we'll start with Rocket and go from toe to head. And you can see that horribly awkward pose. Again, nothing done on the legs. Working on the leather of the belts. Happy with the colors of the costume. This should not be a glossy black. That'll be taken care of with the spray. Then of course we've got the flesh tones, and then all of that fishnet to worry about. And I've roughed the hair color in, but I haven't done anything with the face. Same thing for Sweet Pea. I've got the hair roughed in. Haven't done anything on the face. Happy with the gauntlets. I started on those. The pauldron is nicely done. Don't know if I'm going to age that up a little bit more. Maybe I will. Working on the leggings. She doesn't have as many laces, but she's got as many of those eyelets I have not done yet. And then down into the robot base. And if I spun her around, which is not easy because everything here is being held together by ever the slightest of pressure. But if I move them around to the back, you can see how I've got that hood started on Sweet Pea. And yeah, for a first week, it's a good amount. And I can concentrate on the fleshy bits next week.
And that's going to bring an end to week 1 of Sucker Punch 2. The Son of Sucker Punch, or the Return to the Valley of the Sucker Punch. I haven't quite decided which it's going to be yet. But these ladies are looking good. Getting those bases altered was no mean feat. I wanted to make sure that the whole thing going together was going to work before it was worth even figuring out if I was going to do these figures. I need to make sure that there's a way to display them all in a row in as minimal amount of space needed as possible. But I'm very happy with how it's come through. Again, not the widest spectrum of colors needed. It's all blacks and silvers and grays, and not a lot except for that. And so where I have the option, like I said, of adding more color, I'm certainly taking that option, because it makes for a drab build if I don't. So you behave. Okay. And sculpting little bits where I need to. There's the hood. The hood's looking good. All's good in the hood. That's going to cure up over the weekend, and I'll start on that next week. And let's see, the fleshy bits are all that's left, and I have to be more careful with these than Baby Doll, because Baby Doll was more porcelain and white and artificially so pale. And these can stand to be more suntanned, more gritty, for lack of a better term, colors for their flesh. So that'll be fun. That'll be a nice change from doing all the clean white porcelain skin. And I need to figure out why this isn't working. There you go. That's the arms for Sweet Pea. And again, the challenge has become on this build is, how many different variations of black can you do? So we're going to find out how well that goes on into next week. So until then, be good to each other, be safe, be smart, and be back next week.